Over the course of the past few years, there's been a good number of upcoming extreme demons that I've been pretty interested in but have sort of fallen behind in terms of public updates and news, and a lot of them are some pretty interesting projects that a good number of people want to see finished and released to the public. I made a video similar to this a long time ago, but it was focused only on upcoming top 1s, whereas this video will have basically any extreme demon that has fallen behind. So today I wanted to highlight 10 of these upcoming extreme demons that I think should be revived. Pretty much every level on this list has had some sort of abandonment in the past, or it has had a level of inactivity. This video isn't going to call out the people behind each of these levels. There are a few levels on here that could be still being worked on in the background very slowly. There just haven't been very many public updates recently. It would be nice to see more updates of these levels in the future. If you have another extreme demon, or just a level in general that you would like to see come back, feel free to comment it down below, and while you're down there, please remember to like and subscribe. And with that out of the way, let's get on with the video. So a good number of these levels aren't necessarily completely dead, they just kind of do need some sense of revival, and the first one is definitely one of those. So first up we have Death Corridors, to be specific, either the Ice Cave version or the Kugelblitz version. I mean, Death Corridor has had a very long and complicated history. It's been around since like 2.0. It's been a very, very long process. And for several years now, Kugelblitz has been the gatekeeper of the official version that will be rated, working on Death Corridor as like a personal project that is meant to be top 1 upon verification. So while it would be nice to see this version of the level verified, I'm not necessarily confident that it'll happen anytime soon, although it would be nice to see more direct activity from Kugelblitz on this. Best case scenario, this shit is coming out in like 2 years, dude. It's gonna be a while. There is another version that was meant to be around top 40, if I recall correctly, as of a year or two ago, that was set to be verified by Ice Cave, and he was making some pretty good progress on it, but Ice Cave has sort of gone dark in terms of his Geometry Dash community activity, which is more than understandable. It would, however, still be interesting for this version of the level to be verified by Ice Cave or by someone else, as it is also considered official. There was a point where this version and Kugelblitz's version were announced to both be considered official versions of the level and that they would both be rated. I guess I would hope RobTop would have been briefed on this, but in terms of decoration, I would imagine that RobTop would be willing to make some sort of exception considering the history of both versions of the level, similarly to something like Silent Clubstep, so I don't think that should be as much of an issue. I certainly wouldn't necessarily mind a update to the level's visuals on either version, but I also kind of like the idea of a level being rated that was fully decorated years ago as sort of a nod to the nostalgia from some of the phases during 2.1, similarly to how levels like Eternus and Acheron use the aesthetic of 1.9. Regardless, I would be happy to see activity with either version of the level, as I think it would be really interesting to see this level finally rated on the servers after so many years since the level was officially announced to be verified. Next up, I guess at number 9, we have Skelly's version of Deimos. I guarantee a good number of you have not heard anything about this level in a few years. This version of Deimos was sort of going to be the sequel to Phobos until Hybrid's version came along, which was kind of determined to be a more accurate, like true to the original version. That one ended up being more successful, being verified, getting rated, and all of that. Skelly's Deimos, I think, still looks pretty cool. It pays less homage to like the 1.9 aesthetic that Phobos still kind of represents because it's from that era in the game, and sort of goes for a more what if Phobos was a collab made today. Today meaning a few years ago now, but that's whatever. The point is, I still think this collab is like super interesting, and there was a lot of momentum behind the level when it was given to Swyborg way back when, and I'm really saddened by the fact that the level still hasn't really been released. Swyborg's most recent update post regarding his inactivity, and specifically a Nemesis, doesn't make any mention of either Eternal Night or Skelly's Deimos, as I don't think he plans on working on either of those levels anymore. So the fate of Deimos would have been pretty unsure until a slightly more recent development, recent being a more relative term. A few months ago, Skelly announced that there was a new verifier for Deimos, and I checked out their channel, and they haven't posted any public progress of that yet. That's not to say they haven't made any progress, perhaps they have been playing the level, but feel free to go to this person and send them some love. It's really quite a shame that so much effort and work was put into this level, and it still hasn't been publicly released. So good luck to Moog, I hope I pronounced that correctly, on verifying this level. I'm assuming this level probably won't be buffed to be top 1 in its current state. I know it originally was meant to be that like a few years ago, but it probably shouldn't at this point. I would imagine it would place somewhere in the top 30, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. Next up at number 8 is a level that I don't think very many of you have even heard about, and that level is Killstealer, which is an upcoming extreme demon that is the entire length of Killstealer, the song by Waterfall. Flame that overall I just really like the vibe of, because it's got this really cool like click sync, and also just the song in general is kind of a banger, so it's cool to see a level with a full song. This level was passed to Bgram as a verifier. However, even though he did make a community post over a year ago clarifying that he wanted to verify it before every end, but then obviously every end was passed to another verifier, so now I'm not entirely sure where this level is going to go. I could find one clip of him playing the level from last year on his Twitch account, but there hasn't been very much activity regarding the level more recently. I have full faith that Bgram can verify this, and I would really like to see this level finally released, because I've kind of been tracking its progress for years, sort of under the radar, just because a lot of people don't know about this level. I'll leave a link to the full showcase in the description. I genuinely think it's a really interesting level, and feel free to check it out. Next up after this is Scattered Faith, which is in a weird predicament, because this one's actually still being decorated. It's just been quite some time since the last decoration preview. I think this level has a very unique theme and a very unique vibe around it. It reminds me a little bit of Galaxy Collapse. There have been a few parts that have been made public since, but it would be really nice to see some more hype around this level, because this level is genuinely really interesting. I don't exactly know how difficult it is, but it's definitely going to be pretty fucking difficult. There was a point where I do believe this was considered to be an upcoming top 1, although for a lot of levels, I just don't know where that stands post Amethyst, and the fact that Grief is looming in the corner and is probably way harder than Amethyst is. I think it would be nice to see this level to see more attention, because it deserves it. At 6 and 5, we have 2 levels that were both meant to be AP Team projects, and much easier than basically every other level on this list. First up, I'll say God of Despair, which we haven't gotten any news about in years. At first glance, you might think it's just another generic red hell level, but there is a lot of pink and orange in the level, as well as some more unique theming that hasn't fully come out as of this preview that I could find of it from like 4 years ago, but was confirmed to be sort of the plan for the level. And then at number 5, we have Blood Swamps, which is like this really interesting level that's themed after something in Doom Eternal and is really well decorated. AP Team as a team has kind of died. The last project that they released was obviously the Apocalyptic Trilogy, which was finished over a year ago, and there's been basically no news regarding any of these levels, or I guess either of these levels I should say. I know the host has been pretty disconnected from the game, but it would still be really cool to see both of these levels make a return, because I genuinely think that both of them are really interesting concepts, especially Blood Swamps, and they both look much better than all of the stuff that AP Team has done previously. There are a good number of people who shit on AP Team for things like Sonic Wave Infinity, which while I understand, they've come a long way since Sonic Wave Infinity. I'm of the opinion that Cosmic Cyclone is pretty good, and for all of its faults, I do still think the Apocalyptic Trilogy is, at least in terms of decoration, a really cool level. And because these 2 projects were started much later than those levels, they've kind of been given a better foundation, in contrast to something like the Apocalyptic Trilogy, which by definition is going to be very difficult to balance. So again, I do really hope that these levels come out eventually. I know both of them were confirmed to be much easier than all of their other projects, so there's a better chance that a lot of people in the audience would be able to play them, and so I hope to see something of their fate in the future. At number 4, we have Galaxy Collapse, which we actually have gotten a little bit more news about recently. I still just want to put this here though, because I have a feeling that it will continue to sort of wave in and out of relevancy. I do think this level is in good hands, and out of all of the levels on this list, it is definitely the one that is the most active. The reason I still wanted to mention it though is because I do want the attention that's focused on this level more recently to be more consistent, because for the past few years it's sort of gone in and out of activity, and it would be really cool to see more and more of it, because I don't want it to suffer the same fate as Orochi, where it gets a new preview after like 4 years in the future, and like in between those 2 previews there's like no talk about it. This one's definitely the level that I have the most faith in. It's a really interesting level in general, at least to me. I kind of have no idea where this is going to place, because I know originally it was meant to be top 1 way back when, but honestly this level might be hard enough that it could still place somewhere in the top 5. I honestly have no idea, and honestly couldn't care less. The level's interesting to me regardless. At number 3, we have Eternal Night, which there hasn't been very much news of since. I remember mentioning this in another similar video I made that was about upcoming top 1 specifically, and firstly, I'm imagining that this probably isn't top 1 anymore, at least it won't be after Grief. This game has gotten so much harder since this level was worked on, although to be fair, Eternal Night was very much ahead of its time in terms of difficulty, so it's possible that it still is. Honestly, I don't know. Regardless, I still think this level is a really cool cool concept. I think since the last time I mentioned it in a video, which was over a year ago, there has been literally zero news of it, and it makes me really sad because genuinely this is one of the coolest levels I've seen in this game. I don't think Swyborg has any intention of doing anything with the verification of this level. There is a version of it that is public on the servers. I'm not sure if that's a leak or if that's just someone involved in the project who was like, fuck it, we can release it, it's dead anyways. It's pretty unclear who has the verification at this point. Swyborg didn't mention it in his most recent activity post, and honestly, I think this level is just pretty dead, it seems. From the information that I could find, it seems pretty dead. There was at one point going to be a redecoration facelift for the level, but that was years ago, and other than the first ship, we saw none of that progress. Honestly, I think the easiest path forward, considering that especially I think Electro is pretty inactive, and they, you know, made the level, I think honestly the easiest course forward for this level to ever see the light of day would be for someone to make a remake of it, and then release it through that remake. This is definitely one of the levels on the list I'm less confident will ever see the light of day, but I still wanted to mention it because it is genuinely a really cool level, and if I'm not mistaken, there is a good number of people who think the same thing. I remember when this level was really hyped up like years ago, and it's really sad to see that it's sort of fallen out of favor in terms of how often it's brought up, just because there hasn't been any news with it in years. But it's good enough I still wanted to keep dragging it at least a little longer. At number 2, I put Ascension to Heaven because I haven't seen much of Ascension to Heaven more recently. This is another level where I'm sure there's maybe some activity behind the scenes, but I couldn't find any video of a new part in quite some time, other than some unofficial previews with a couple new parts, and one part that was updated visually about a month ago. I've been glazing this level for years, so I'm sure that a good number of you know kind of what I'm about to say, but I think the theming is super unique, the decoration is super cool. I've made a ton of videos on this level over the years. Feel free to go watch those if you want a more in-depth thought from me on the level in general. But at this point it would kind of just be beating a dead horse, and I would like the horse to not be dead, basically, in this analogy. I don't know. Overall, I would just like to see some more public information about this level and just more activity surrounding it, because it is a really interesting level in my opinion. And finally, at number 1, we have the one, the only Orochi. This is another level that there has unfortunately been a very little amount of news of more recently. There was the first preview of this level in years that was released on NobbleBoy's channel just over 2 years ago now, and I remember making a video on that preview and being super hyped for the level to see more activity, and then since then it's been crickets. Honestly, if you take everything that I just said about Ascension to Heaven and then paste it to Orochi, it still applies. Like, it's still a really cool level, really cool theming. It's been a very long time since this level was originally unveiled, although this is, I think, the oldest level other than Death Corridor on this list, and there's just been nothing recently, and it makes me really sad, because this level's really cool. If anyone has any information on this level, please feel free to comment it down below. I haven't seen anything. I wonder if 2.2 maybe had a little bit of a hand in sort of the levels and activity, because there are a lot of levels that are on this list that have received a lot less attention or activity after 2.2. Other than that, it honestly kind of could just be chalked up to Nobbleboy being pretty inactive, which is just quite unfortunate because this level is genuinely one of the more interesting levels from the time period it was originally announced. The full layout was previewed on Nobbleboy's channel with a promise that it would be the next big thing after Bloodlust on April 23rd, 2018. It has been over 7 years since this level was first announced, and we have like no news over the past 2 years. So while this level is like fully dead, it would be really cool to see this revived. So I put it at the top of the list just because it's the level that is most important to me, but honestly, all of these levels are really interesting. If you have an Extreme Demon that you want to see revived, comment it down below. There's tons of them. If you enjoyed today's video, please remember to like, subscribe, and all that. It's been kind of interesting looking back at all these levels that I haven't really thought about in quite some time, just because they're so inactive. Especially the ones that aren't aimed to be top 1 because they're mentioned a lot less often. Thank you all so much for watching. That's it for today's video, and yeah, stay safe everyone.